Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today we have a very special presentation. We're going to be posing a very interesting question here today. So what does it take to get set up to start refinishing your own guns? And I know a lot of people have been curious about that, and we've done a few videos in the past where we've talked about, spraying your own camo finishes and things like that. So what I thought we'd do, I got some local guys come in to hang out with me here. Got a couple of special guests. We're going to go over and answer this question. I've got Nate here,
hey,
and I've got Ryan.
Yes, sir.
And they are with the King of Camo, local shop up here in Cumming, Georgia. So we've got two Cumming men here.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to have a chat about camo. So today's episode is completely all about camo and all about refinishing and some of the strengths and weaknesses, and we'll kind of get into this and have some fun. And maybe you'll walk away from this episode gleaning a bit of information about, what it takes to get set up to do this sort of thing professionally. And just a real quick note, I would like to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting our videos. If you're interested in a career in gunsmithing technology, you're wanting to get in gunsmithing, reloading, firearms refinishing, just like what these guys are doing, you can check out SDI. They got some awesome programs. Their instructors are amazing. Okay, they've got just a wonderful setup. And if you're looking for that type of higher education, definitely check them out. SDI, Sonoran Desert Institute. Check out the link in the description box below and tell them we sent you over there. So, guys, thanks for hanging out. What's up?
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having us. This is kind of a dream come true for us. We're small time guys, and you came by our shop a couple weeks ago. Got to meet you. That was super cool. It was like the highlight of our year so far. So yeah, it's awesome to be here.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys coming down and hanging out.
It was awesome, man. We just wanted to reach out to you because I know we are big fans. Nate's been a fan of you for forever, and we were like, we're trying to get our name and try and talk to people, like-minded community guys, and he was like, what about Eric from Iraq Veteran? And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'll shoot him a message and see. So
yeah. Well, admittedly, sometimes I'm kind of hard to get in touch with. So I'm glad that we were able to get in contact with each other. I get a lot of inquiries, and admittedly, sometimes it's hard to respond to everybody in a timely manner. So I apologize. I know it took me a while to get back with y'all, but here we are.
Yes.
And I know today we want to discuss a little bit about what people go through when they get into this type of business. I know there's a lot of considerations. And so how long have you guys been refinishing guns? Is this new for y'all, or y'all been at it a while?
Well, Nate's the one that actually started the business with it. I'm generally familiar with firearms, but Nate was the one that got into the refinishing industry.
Awesome. Yeah, I've always enjoyed Call of Duty. And I'll never forget when the first Modern Warfare came out. You were able to customize your guns, and the Cryptek pattern was available. And I thought, whoa, how cool is this? And I immediately wanted to paint my guns that way. And so I started reaching out to people. What I discovered that locally there weren't any refinishers available to do that type of work. And so I reached out to some folks over in Utah, and sent some stuff that way. Excuse me. And it took a while to get my stuff back sometimes, and sometimes my stuff came back not really looking the way that I wanted it to, and thought to myself, what, maybe I can do this.
Cool.
And so I started in the garage, and like probably every other amateur, started with spray paints on airsoft guns, and then after a couple of airsoft matches, realized like this stuff doesn't last. It doesn't quite stay, and started doing some more research, and just figured out that there are some actual firearm finishes out there that are designed for this type of application. So, got into the YouTube vortex and signed up to YouTube University.
Yep.
And started figuring it out, and watching other guys paint their guns. I realized, I can probably do this myself. And I also went to the Duracoat Refinishing School, which was a giant education for me. I messed up a couple of Glocks and a couple of shotguns in the process of trying it on my own. And then after going there, I just realized, okay, there is a step-by-step procedure to do it the right way. And just took off from there.
Wow.
Started in my garage and then moved on to a shop. My wife got tired of strangers coming out to the house with firearms, and she kicked me out. So I got super fortunate in the fact that my brother had a small strip mall with an empty unit, and he just gave me the keys and said, "Have at it, bro." And,
what a good brother.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you're going to get. He's going to get free finishes for life on all his guns, right?
Most likely.
That's how that works.
In fact, we're doing one of his Daniel defenses right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Epic.
Yep.
I've always appreciated with the firearms world the amount of creativity people put into their work. And one of the things that's always intrigued me so much about the concept of refinishing your gun, you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned Call of Duty. Because when you look at all these awesome guns that get put into these video games, in the modern video games, the designs and the models they use are super realistic. Oftentimes the sounds are perfect. The sights of them are like they look right. They sound right. And when you look at the way that the animations are done for the operation, the reloading, everything is done at like such a tier of level that, it's fast and it's epic, but a good gunfighter could run a gun that fast.
Absolutely.
So it puts you into the mindset of a soldier, of a, whatever. But the cool thing is, I've always appreciated the creativity people have when they come up with all these random finishes and stuff. And, I don't want to say that it's a super new thing, but I want to say that Mike over at the guy over at Duracoat, what's his last name? Mike
Lauer?
Mike Lauer? Yeah. All right. You're right. It is Mike Lauer. And it's funny, at the trade shows, he's always a guy that's walking around with that like cut off blue jean jacket with the sleeves cut off. Yep. And you would see him walking around and think like, who's this homeless person walking around SHOT Show? He really like pioneered the idea of a person being able to take weird colors and put it on their gun. Like he was the first person to go to the automotive industry and go, wait a minute, we can spray this on guns.
Yep.
And he made a business out of it. I think
he
it's
did.
epic.
In fact, we actually recently lost Mike. He passed away recently. I got the opportunity when I went to the Duracoat University to just have a one-on-one with him, and very much like you, man, very down to earth and funny guy, sense of humor, like you wouldn't believe, and he had a passion for what he was doing. If you walked into his gun shop, you would have seen 400 or 500 guns, all of them custom painted, all different colors. He was all about the variety.
He was such a good salesman, and I didn't know Mike passed away. I did not know that. Yeah. I'm finding this out right now. That's terrible. I mean, he was such a good salesman. Like anytime you would go over to his booth, he was always like, "Let me show you this." He was an ambassador to firearms refinishing, and he's the person that introduced me into finishing guns. But the point that I wanted to make in its entirety of it is that it's a somewhat recent development that people have been spraying these random finishes on guns to get this. In the old days, maybe we would parkerize something, and maybe we would blue something.
Exactly.
And like maybe hot bluing salts, you're doing a hot bluing, which requires very specific type of thing. And then it's not taking away from the people that do hot bluing or rust bluing or, color case hardening and things like that. Those all have a place. But those very traditional firearms finishes have been around for centuries, like long time. Versus, the concept of somebody taking a paint gun and spraying it on a rifle, that's not exactly a very old concept. I mean, how long had Duracoat been in business? 15 years?
Yeah, 15 years.
Yeah, it's still relatively recent in the grand spectrum of like the firearms industry.
Yeah,
I think Cerakote has done a really good job of marketing their product as well.
Right.
But very much like Duracoat, they're a ceramic finish, and it's an oven-baked finish. I think you would say that Duracoat and Cerakote perform pretty much the same. The real difference is in the application process and the catalyst hardener that is used. They're significantly better finishes than parkerizing or bluing. You're performing somewhat of a candy coat on your parts, and so they just keep the elements away a little bit better.
Right.
Sure. All right. Pro tip. All right. If you are in a gunsmithing shop, and let's say that a customer comes in and they want to have an item parkerized, or maybe they want to have an item Duracoated, if you take Cerakote or Duracoat and spray it on dry park right out of the tank, get everything off of it, absolutely no oil or moisture. If it's a good dry part with no oil, that Cerakote or Duracoat will stick to that item for eternity if you spray it on parkerizing.
Yep.
Well, and that's our
because
biggest
it's got
thing.
all those little fine voids in the metal that parkerizing is known for, because parkerizing holds oils well because of the, I guess you'd call it the crystalline structure of the metal.
Right.
It has these little microscopic divots. If you were to look at a parkerized piece under a microscope, it's made to hold oil, but it'll also hold Duracoat and Cerakote.
Right, and that's the biggest thing. Like for me, whenever we do the process, and I'm talking to our customers and our clients that come in with whatever paint job they want to do, whether it's Cerakote or Duracoat or any of the other ceramic coatings that we do for it, a lot of them, it's because it's relatively new, they don't really understand the process. And it's vastly different from going outside and spraying with some Rust-Oleum,
Sure.
on a rifle. So we have to tell them that process, tell them what goes into it, because once they finally understand that it's not like, hey, I go out in the backyard and I do this for you, and 20 minutes later I got your gun back. No, it takes time,
Right.
to make sure the coating goes on.
So the gun has to be thoroughly disassembled,
Yes.
degreased,
Mm-hmm.
blasted,
Yep.
degreased again,
Yep.
sprayed.
Well, usually,
I mean-
depending on what you do, you can put it into the oven, because just any residual oil that's still on it after you do the degreasing process, you want to make sure that all of it's gone.
Yeah. I find that AKs are a good example.
Stuff creeps out of them.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
sure does. You
Very much
can
so.
degrease an AK, and to the eye it looks dry. And then you put it in the oven for about 20 minutes, and you take it out, and all kinds of oil has seeped out of little cracks and crevices.
Where all those rivets are and all.
Yep. And so, repeating that process over and over can be somewhat cumbersome, but really, to achieve the perfect paint job, that's one of the things that Mike taught us, is that you've got to follow these steps. If you follow these steps, you will get to the perfect paint job that will last much longer than anything else.
Yeah. So preparation is certainly one of the most important, rules of the game.
Well, it's paramount, because if you don't, then you're putting out a product that's going to fail.
There you
So-
go. So for people that are wanting to get into doing their own refinishing, now this is a bit of a rhetorical question for me, because I've done a bit of Duracoat and Cerakote work in my career or whatever, but I know that there's a lot of specialized equipment required. But just for the sake of the audience, what were some of the biggest challenges that y'all faced getting set up to do this as a business?
That'd be a Nate question.
Well, when I first started, I was just painting right on top of the gun, fully assembled. So the big one is understanding full disassembly and reassembly. You want to put a gun back together safely, and so that it still functions. But aside from that, I think a lot of guys in their specific trades will always tell you your tools are what make you awesome. And so having a good airbrush, a good compressor, a good sandblast machine, a good soak tank, somewhere to be able to degrease everything. Those things are so important. We don't really think about those things when we see, a guy doing it online, and you see a quick paint job being done. You don't think about the entire process, every pin, spring, detent coming out. And God almighty, have I ever lost some springs coming out of guns,
And the customer is going to get their gun back with the correct springs in it. So
100%.
that means that, oh crap, now I got to call up Numeric and order some spring. Or
Exactly.
I've got to keep a random bin of springs in stock for the inevitable spring that's going to go flying across the room. And we all, we've all done it, right? You've got it compressed, like, all right, look, I'm right there. And then you hear, tick, and then it's just like crickets, and you hear, you hear it hit the floor, and then you do the whole look around on the floor, and then you do the whole dang it, and you get frustrated and just grab one out of the bin and replace it.
Well, and when I first started, I spent many hours on my hands and knees in the garage looking for the spring I just lost, and then realizing, maybe if I kept a cleaner shop, floor, I might be able to find it quicker.
Yeah.
And then
It's a great observation.
Yep. And then not just that, but then, you come up with ingenious ways to find your springs, like magnets or a broom. A broom is a good one.
Yeah.
Getting in the corners and sweeping to the center and sifting through the dust to find your
and
spring.
like hopefully you get it all in that one pile, and you're like, okay, now I'm like trying to find like a piece of gold or something here.
That's right.
So
I use magnetic parts trays on my bench.
Yep.
That helps keep things organized a bit, especially if you've got everything disassembled really great. All the little compartments are nice. So like, let's say you've disassembled a trigger mechanism or something, and you want to just keep the trigger mechanism pins and accoutrements in proper order. You can just put it in each little cubby on the magnetic tray,
right.
and that helps you keep things organized. Especially if it's a gun that you don't disassemble a lot and you don't want to get parts mixed up.
Oh yeah,
I've also
like a Browning A5.
I have a love. I have a love-hate relationship with magnetic parts trays because I've sometimes taken some guns apart and lost a detent or something and can't find it anywhere, and then months later I lift up my parts tray and oh my God, there
it rolled
it is.
under the tray. That's always a good first place to look. But the nice thing is, if a spring does jettison, maybe with a bit of luck, it might catch the parts
Yes,
tray.
which has happened before.
Sometimes that happens.
Yep.
So obviously some equipment considerations. There's also the artistic consideration, which
Right.
I think is something that's worth talking about when it comes to refinishing guns, because you do have to have an artistic eye to kind of go, hey, how is the flow of this piece going to look? It's not as simple as just painting a portrait, right? Like if we were to just paint a mountain portrait and look at the mountains, well, that mountain is not on a three-dimensional surface. It's not on an item that has to have stocks that collapse and extend, or
Right.
safeties that have to move, or a slide that has to reciprocate or something like that. So there are the artistic elements of making sure that you can, make something look awesome.
Yeah.
But also the technical element of making sure, hey, that this particular part in this particular area doesn't get too much tolerance built up, so it doesn't
Right.
not work. That's the last, and that was always my challenge with Duracoat. I love Duracoat. It's a fantastic finish, and I love the fact that with Duracoat, you can get so many bougie colors.
Oh yeah.
And I even told Mike the last time I saw him, it was at SHOT Show maybe 2 years or 3 years ago. Last time I was at SHOT, I went to talk to Mike. And I said, Mike, one of the things I appreciate about your product is that they are available in so many cool colors.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that Cerakote hasn't quite, they're more tactical, which I can appreciate. But Duracoat was always bougie. If somebody came in and wanted some glittery pink and gold or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But that was always the challenge of ensuring that not too much tolerance was built up, because you can build up a lot of tolerance with Duracoat if you're not careful. So walk me through the artistic process. Like when someone comes in with a vision, how does it feel for you to be able to kind of help them, meet their goal for their vision they're looking for?
Well, I've always been a bit of an artistic person. Always been into art and appreciated art, especially something that's original. I think that's, part of being a good artist is being able to come up with original pieces. And, of course, when getting into learning how to custom paint a camo pattern or a theme, you look at other people's work. And if you have that good eye, you can pick up on the little nuances of how the pattern flows and what are the little accents that they have done to make that theme really come to life and pop. I would say you got to have a little bit of it in you, but also we today with the internet, we have so much content available for us to reference, to look at.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun to go on there and look at the jobs that people absolutely botched. I mean, look, we're all human.
It's true.
Right? I can't tell you how many Duracoat jobs that I did, and then I was kind of like, you know what? I think I'm going to start over.
Yep.
And look, it's okay to tell the customer, hey, your gun's going to take a little time because I'm not exactly happy with the result. I'd rather put out something I can be proud of. And one Glock I did, I don't know if I have a photo of it creeping around here somewhere. I'd have to ask Ray up at Moss. I did a Duracoat job one time where this lady wanted her Glock to look like leopard print on the slide, like a leopard. But she wanted the frame to just be kind of a solid color. So I did one a little bit different. I did the frame one color, and I kind of feathered the belly to make it look like like a leopard's belly, because they're kind of had that kind of bright color on their belly and getting a little darker on the outside. And then, of course, the pattern. I took stencil material from one of Mike's stencil kits, and I took an X-Acto knife, and I cut these little shapes out to look like, they look like little eyes on the leopard. And I went through and I painstakingly airbrushed every one of those little eyes on this Glock slide by hand, and it turned out great. I matte clear coated the whole thing, and dude, it was bougie. And that lady was so happy. That's the one camo job that I did in my limited finishing career that I was like, wow, that turned out so much better than I expected it to. And what's weird is I went into it thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I agreed to do this, because I'm thinking I'm way in over my head here. There's I am not good enough to do this. I am not good enough to do this. I kept telling myself that. But I pulled it off, and it looked so epic. It looked just like a leopard. I was so proud of it, and she loved it. She was happy. Her husband loved it, and it's like, I won. It was a win. Now, were there people out there that could probably do that finish and do circles around me any day? Probably.
Yep.
Right? Is that the best leopard print Glock ever done? Probably not. Probably the worst one. But my customer was happy, and she loved it, and that's all that matters.
Exactly.
As long as she's happy,
absolutely.
I'm happy.
Well, and
I loved it, so it's like.
And another thing that I would say about how do you figure it out? How do you start? Well, sometimes it just takes messing up a few times to really learn. Just very much like the tolerance levels with Duracoat. Sometimes it just takes practice applying it to really understand how much you're laying on and how much not to lay on. You know?
Right. And what parts to be really careful about tolerances, especially 1911s are really finicky.
I don't really like to mess with internal parts. Controls, obviously the main pieces, the uppers, lowers, the frames. Those are parts we'll paint all day. But if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, will you paint my bolt?"
or BCG grouping.
Yeah, I probably won't. I'll if it's a bolt action gun, I'll paint the lever, but I probably won't paint the bolt. I'll tape it off. You just don't want to mess with those internal tolerances,
especially on someone's blueprinted bolt that's everything like the action's been blueprinted and is super precise. Like you don't want to add any weird variables into the mix.
That's right.
So what type of advice would you guys give to someone who is maybe looking to get into this type of thing as a potential career? I mean, what would be some advice you would impart?
Well, one thing, just know your market, know your place, know where you got people around you, and also, especially like in Nate's case, education is key. Knowing more and talking to people about it will help you out tremendously, especially if you're trying to learn the craft. If you know more about your craft and you're able to speak intelligently about it, that's the same thing with Nate. Nate's been in this for a while, and he actually went to the Institute to learn how to do all this stuff. So, Nate, that's probably the biggest thing.
I think, right now, KG Industries, Cerakote, Duracoat, they all offer a school. You can do it online or you can go in person. I think COVID really kind of forced a lot of people to provide a class online. But you can also watch guys on YouTube. If you have enough practical knowledge, you can probably figure it out on your own.
That's how I learned.
Yep, yeah.
Right.
And I was doing it professionally for a while.
I watched a guy, his website was Montactical. And then he later on changed it to Freedom Stencils. And now Freedom Stencils, you can go on there. You can purchase any camo stencil that you want. They have a bunch of themes for tumbler cups, for guns, whether it be a pistol or a rifle. You can purchase the vinyl that you need to apply your camo pattern. You can go directly to Duracoat, Cerakote, or Guncoat's website, purchase the colors that you want, get yourself an airbrush. So it's relatively easy. The information is out there. Getting really good at it, that's where the practical stuff comes in.
I am so glad that you mentioned Guncoat. because it is a relatively easy finish to spray as well. Also, I can't believe I didn't think about this till now, but thinking about the Brownells Alumihide.
Yep.
Now, I did a video. In fact, my last refinishing video that I put up on the channel was of the Brownells Alumihide, and it's in an aerosol can. You shake it up. It's got the hardener in there. It's got the pigment, and you're off to the races. So there are ready-to-spray options that are relatively easy for the end user. Let's say that you're not going to get into the business of, spraying your own finishes, but maybe you just got an old scratched-up, deer rifle that you just want to put some finish on to keep it from rusting, and it's just your field gun, and you're not trying to make everything perfect. You're just going to close the bolt on your bolt action, leave it assembled, and then just spray what you see just to make the deer not see it, and to keep it impervious to the elements. All right. Alumihide's probably your choice for that. And I do have a video on that. So there are those options. Now, obviously, for the professional, you're going to have a much better result with, actually mixing, something like Cerakote and Duracoat correctly and then spraying it with with your airbrush. So in terms of airbrushes that you use, you have some small ones for fine work, and then you've got some for, coating work.
Yeah.
Want to talk about the equipment a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite HVLP sprayer for the larger parts is made by Seda. It's a German company. It's a super, super fine sprayer. It's not cheap. The cheapest one's probably in the $600 range.
Oh, wow.
I love it. It probably has the finest mist spray of any gun that I've ever used. And for the finer detail stuff, Posh is a popular one for the cheaper option.
Yeah.
If you want to go mid-range to higher range, I would recommend Iwata.
Wow.
That's what I use. So I have the combination of a Seda sprayer and an Iwata airbrush.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I went on Amazon and bought a little cheap automotive touch-up gun. So people that are just getting started, you can buy a touch-up gun for like $15, $20. To just do a one-off or something. I'm not suggesting you do that to get set up professionally, but you can get some extremely entry-level equipment. You're going to get very entry-level results.
Yeah.
And the one little tip that I would give about those automotive touch-up guns, the little cheap ones you can get on Amazon or at like Home Depot or something, those are cool, but you have to really take the time to keep them very clean because they will gum up real easy. And so what I do, maybe you can let me know if this is a good way to clean up, but I'll put the cleaning like acetone or maybe the cleaning agent that comes in like the little bottles, like a pink liquid.
Yep.
And I'll just run it through it, cycle it through and let it spray through.
That's exactly.
I prefer to use acetone. Duracoat recommends that you use their paint stripper. They also have a reducer that you can add up to 10% in certain paints if your mixture is a little thick or a little bit older. You want to make it a little thinner as you apply it. You can add up to 10% of the reducer in there. The reducer helps to clean out the gun as well, very well.
Very good.
But I prefer to use acetone, and what I try to do, and of course, you get caught up doing a paint job, and then, a customer comes to the front, and you walk away, and you leave paint in the gun. Ooh, buddy.
That's a nightmare.
It's a cleanup
once
job.
Once that stuff hardens, you almost have to just replace the nozzles, replace the filters.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're pretty much done.
Sometimes what I have been successful with is trying to completely disassemble the airbrush and then soak it in acetone.
Maybe overnight?
Yeah, overnight.
Just so it can break down.
And then come back and then rinse it back out with acetone.
Okay.
And I usually use acetone in a spray bottle so that I can direct the spray, into the nozzle or into the holding cup to push any material that may start hardening up in there out.
Okay.
I found that that's a successful way of not using a bunch of acetone to clean your gun, because if you have to pour a beaker full of acetone to soak your parts, you're using quite a bit of acetone, and that's can get expensive.
Right.
Making mistakes can always be expensive. But
that's right.
I use acetone. Acetone does have a tendency to leave a little bit of a white residue
I've noticed that myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you'll always want to kind of go back with like a paper towel and wipe that residue away before you put a new paint in.
Okay. Good advice. Good advice. What do you recommend for your personal protective equipment? So for PPE, what are you running? What do you recommend people when they're spraying?
Yeah, I have a mask. Obviously, we use a paint mask, but I like the ones with a full face visor.
Yes.
That way, you're not having to wear goggles that might also fog up. And I've got a relatively nicer mask that we use. Kind of looks like something that's like a nuclear mask almost. But yeah, and of course, replacing the filtration pads in there often. That's important. Duracoat, Cerakote, Gun Coat, they're all carcinogenic paints, so you don't want to be breathing that stuff in.
A good ventilation system is
Yeah.
also paramount too. Make sure you have good ventilation so you're not sitting in that, so it can be put out. Because especially with painting too, Nate's had this happen whenever he's painting, and you have all those particles in the air. If you're not having proper ventilation, if anything catches on those particles, it can still land back on what you're painting. So
You know, I noticed when I came up to your shop the other day and I saw your spray booth, it reminded me exactly. So my local luthier that lives down the road here, Tom, his booth is set up almost the same as yours, and it looks like it's just got literally like a household air filter, and you're pumping the air through, so it keeps the air clean,
Right.
and brings all those particles and pulls them through the filter. And I guess just periodically, just replace the filter.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Definitely,
Okay.
yeah. The spray can build up on that filter, and then as you're spraying, you're throwing air pressure in that direction. That spray that has dried on your air filter can turn to a dust, and then it'll start getting into the air as you're spraying your new
Exactly.
part.
So you have to keep that filter.
You want to keep them
changed
clean
out.
for sure. Yeah, and I'd say
And imagine if that was your lungs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when you
Exactly.
see the way that air filter looks, that's why you're wanting to protect yourself, because all
Exactly.
that crap can get in your lungs. That's not good for you.
Definitely, and the kind of the last thing I would say that's important is a good pair of gloves, some nitrile gloves.
you definitely don't want to be spraying acetone on your
you'll,
bare hands.
you'll end up with some little speckles of paint, and because Duracoat and Cerakote and Gun Coat are all very good coatings, it will stick to your fingernails and it will not come off.
Yeah.
So you'll look like you paint your fingernails from time to time.
I've noticed on the nitrile gloves, one bit of advice that I could impart is, the real thin, cheaper nitrile gloves, like the blue ones, the acetone will absolutely just eat those things.
It will
Like
go right through
you'll
them.
get acetone on your hands, and they'll just fall off your hands. Like it liquefies them. You got to use kind of the rubberized one.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And they usually come in a black,
Yeah.
which is what I recommend.
Right.
Heavy black, like rubber. They're not really nitrile, are they? They're like a thick rubber glove,
Yes,
right?
they are. They are. I forget the name of the brand that we use.
I think it's is it Black Cobra or something like that? Something to that
Yeah,
effect.
it's something like that.
Yeah.
They make a great glove, and they have a variety of sizes. So, if you got really small hands like Donald Trump, then they got your size.
That's right.
Yeah. So gloves, a mask, good filtration system. Some people like to wear an apron or a full painter's suit. I don't really find that that's all that necessary unless you're doing a very big job and spraying a bunch of paint. You don't want that stuff because it will mist into the air at some point and get back onto your clothing. So it's very difficult to remove from your clothing.
All right. So one last thing before we let everybody go. Okay, out of all the jobs you've done so far, what was the one that it turned out and you were like, oh, this is epic. This is the best work I've ever done.
I would
What's
say
the
here
best one?
recently for me is Miss Zedra's gun.
Yeah,
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, we Ryan has a knack for reaching out to YouTube celebrities. He reached out to Miss Alex Zedra and inquired if she'd be interested in sending us a gun for custom paint, and she said yes. And
Very cool.
he asked her what she wanted, and she wanted gun candy, which is kind of a newer finish to the industry. It's recommended that you mix it with Gun Coat, but it can be used with Cerakote or Duracoat. Basically, you apply matte black first, and then in a clear, either satin clear, gloss clear, or matte clear, you would mix in this gun candy powder, and it produces kind of a chameleon effect on the gun.
Right.
Which is, it's pretty sexy. It's pretty sexy.
It's really cool.
So Miss Alex requested that we do gun candy, and the particular color she requested was Razorback, which is kind of like a yellowish green that changes to black to purple.
Oh, cool.
We recently posted a couple of Instagram videos on our Instagram feed to show everybody what we've done, and we're hoping that Miss Alex will do a cool unboxing video on YouTube.
Cool.
But it's just cool because from the angle, depending on how you're looking at it, you can get like a really cool green sheen. But as you walk by it, it changes to that pink, and then it goes to purple, then back to green again. It was just, that was super cool. And Nate did an awesome job, and I was just kind of blown away from it.
You know, those finishes, you start to see all this random stuff in the car industry that people are doing. And I recall the first time I saw that type of finish on a car, and they showed it going by, and you could see it change. And I was thinking to myself, you know, it's only a matter of time before somebody puts that on a gun. So it's funny how Mike pioneered the idea of using essentially what's a car finish on firearms. And, of course, it's done quite well.
Yes.
And he pioneered this industry in a way. And I think it's
did.
so cool to see people taking that technology and applying it to firearms, which, you know, that people do it on guitars, you know, cars,
Right.
wheels, I mean, boats. Four-wheelers, why not guns, right? I mean, it's right in that same thing.
100%. And I would say one of my favorite paint jobs I've ever done was relatively recently. It's within the last year. Was for one of our super awesome customers, Mr. Frank. He brought in this 6.5 Grendel build that he had with the Spartan lower. And we painted the Spartan helmet. We even did the plume. And the interlay Greek kind of
The Greek
pattern.
scrolling on the helmet.
And then just to kind of make it next level, we put some blood spatter on the helmet, and it came out pretty amazing. I sat back and looked at it and was like, wow, I've been doing this for a while, but this one impressed myself.
Really cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sure you're going to know the next question I'm going to ask. All right, so what is the worst one? All right, what's the job that you were like, you know, maybe the customer is happy, but I'm not really happy? Like, what's one that you wish you could take back, and why?
Well,
I'll let you go first. I'm thinking.
I mean, look, it happens to the best of us.
my brother owns a liquor store in East Point, and he has my little flyer in there. And, you know, East Point is quite the plethora of people, quite the variety of humans. And, of course, the liquor store is visited by all types of people. Well, he had this one customer who happened to be a local pimp and wanted his pimp group name and his pimp name put on the gun. So he
wanted a pimp gun.
He wanted a pimp gun. And,
did you spray a pimp gun for him?
I reluctantly sprayed a pimp gun. Well, I tried to coerce him by...
What are you, a hater?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But I tried to coerce him not to do it by just giving him a ridiculous price, and he came back with bet. So
he said, let's do it.
I had no choice but to paint this gun, and it was the theme was Brick City Pimps, and he wanted his slide to look like a brick wall, and then he wanted his pimp name, Dirk de Work, on one side.
Dirk de
Awesome.
Work.
Yep. And so I did it, and it actually turned out really well. Unfortunately, a few weeks later, he ended up shooting himself in the foot with that gun.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He hobbled into the store to tell my brother the story of how it happened. He was showing off the gun and accidentally discharged it into his foot. So
Yeah.
Gun
So on the
safety.
other side, you need to spray Hobblin' Dirk.
Yes.
I mean, that's a cooler
Dirk,
name,
if you're,
isn't it?
If you're watching, I'll redo it for you. We could put Hobbling Dirk on the other side.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I guess that just goes to show you that if someone has a vision for what they want on their gun, like there's a way to do it. And that's what's so interesting about these types of firearms finishes. And I guess what I'd like to sort of end this video on, and another question I want to stage, and this is a hard question. Maybe it's a hard question. All right, so what you do with the spray finishes, what's your opinion on the hydro dipping?
Okay.
You're probably thinking like, "Oh my God, we almost got through this video without having to talk about it."
We've had this discussion
so many times.
a bunch.
Because I got a good buddy that does hydro dipping, and he's so good at it. Like, it looks so good, right?
It does.
But it's a little. The only issue that I have with hydro is that it's a little. Not only do I not like the brightness, it's usually kind of shiny looking. I don't like how shiny it looks.
Yes.
So it's not very tactical looking. It doesn't seem to be that type of thing, but doesn't it almost not have quite the same soul as a hand spray finish? Like it's almost too perfect. It looks too good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
what's your opinion?
With me, with the hydro dipping is really cool because you can get a lot of really, really cool patterns. Right. Especially,
but it's a pattern. Like it's a pattern. It's kind of what you see is what you get.
Yeah, what you see is what you get. You do get that pattern, and we're not. I don't want to knock it because I know there's some really cool patterns you can put on them, but for me, in just my personal preference and opinion, I want quality and longevity over most of anything. So that's my biggest thing, and especially with Cerakote and Duracoat being a ceramic-based paint coating, I know that gun will be protected, especially if the coating's done correctly. That coating will last me substantially longer than
so it's a wear and lubricity issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, a cosmetic issue. In my case, maybe slightly. I'm not big on the cosmetics.
Well, and that too, you have that one look, like you're saying, it looks kind of shiny. You can't really help that with a hydro dip. With Duracoat, like with Nate, like him doing his work and doing his thing with it because he's amazing at what he does.
Yeah.
He can change it. You can go more matte. You can go a little bit flatter. If you want to go glossier, you can do that. So.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say, not to knock the hydro dipping guys. I mean, we can always spray Duracoat or Cerakote over a hydro dip, right? A clear matte to matten it up if you want to. We can get creative that way.
Okay.
The cool thing about hydro dipping is that you can definitely get things on your gun that you probably couldn't airbrush if you didn't have the talent to do that. Right, so hydro dip is a printed graphic, and things like if you ask guys in the industry, do you enjoy painting digicam? Most of them will say no, and the reason is because it's so difficult to get perfect. Getting the lines just perfectly straight and aligned and geometrically sound. It's difficult,
especially on like curves and stuff with those different recesses. It's hard.
It's very difficult, and you can take all the time and have all the diligence in the world, but just one of the stencils being slightly crooked just kind of ruins the look.
I've done a couple of ACU camo finishes in my time, and I ordered the stencil kits from Mike, and I took my time, and I was very meticulous, and it turned out functional. It turned out decent. But still wasn't quite what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
As meticulous as I could be, it still just didn't quite have the look that it was supposed to.
And it's a very detail-oriented camo pattern. Most of the digicam stuff out there is printed.
Mm-hmm.
Like clothing and bags. It's printed on there, and so that material is difficult to replicate by painting by hand. Right.
So that might be one area that the hydro dipping kind of has a leg up on the traditional finishes.
Right. Definitely, and that's where I would say, like, if you're dead set on digicam of some type, hydro dipping's probably your best choice. But there are guys out there, including myself, who have gotten really good at painting patterns like Cryptek. All the different variants of Cryptek. Cryptek is also very detail oriented. But it's not. It lends a little bit more to the creative side, whereas digicams are very.
It's a very hard line.
Yeah,
very
they've
hard
got
lines.
hard lines, and I've always preached with your own do-it-yourself camo finishes. Like a lot of the videos that I've put out on YouTube of spraying camo finishes, it's just me going out in the yard and grabbing ferns and all kind of different foliage and just going after it. And yeah, the lines aren't super pronounced, and yeah, there's some slop and some overspray, but you know what? If you stick it over in the woods, it's like, where's the gun? Like it's effective at breaking up the lines. A good camo job should break the lines up, not define them. And I feel like digital camo always gives it a very blocky and defined and distinctive look that you know what you're looking at when you see it. It's not very good camo. It really isn't.
It's really not.
Well, and I mean, there's a reason that it's not used by the U.S. military anymore.
Yeah, it made no sense why we wore that. I don't know why.
You're right. A softer camo, something with less hard lines, I think is also prettier to look at. You know, if it's just a Gucci gun that you want camoed up, I think it's much prettier than a Digicam with all those hard lines.
So one thing that I do, all right, I'm going to give you a little secret. This is a way you can kind of cheat a little bit. So if you spray, let's just say you're going to do your own homemade camo or whatever and just use crap in the yard and you got some overspray and not real clearly defined lines, once you're done with whatever colors you're going to use, take yourself some matte clear and get in there and just put a good clear coat over the entire thing, and it will make those colors sort of pop and blend and sort of homogenize, if you will. And believe it or not, it will actually clean up a lot of that overspray and slop a bit. And there's something about the clear coat, it kind of finishes the finish. So I'd recommend a clear coat, especially when it's not quite the best result. The clear coat can kind of help make it pop.
Yes, that, and I've also noticed something that I wish I could remember his name, but the owner of Freedom Stencils does in his demonstration videos is he'll go back with one of the original colors of the camo pattern and spray a little bit at a distance to kind of help break up the lines after he has removed all the stencils. And that helps soften up the camo. It helps kind of hide any of the imperfections or mistakes you may have made. And it really kind of makes the camo pattern blend together nicely.
Well, and that's one of the big things because, it's not my forte with the whole spraying and everything, but I do help with Nate when from time to time, and Nate's a great teacher, especially when he's talking about it with that distance, making sure you keep equidistant off the part so you know where your spray is going and you know where you can hit a little bit harder or back off. And he's taught me that, and it's been it kind of changes the level of like what the paint job can be once you know how to kind of get those little tricks in there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys hanging out, and I know we could probably talk about this for hours, so we're going to let the viewers get on with their day. And here's the thing. I'm going to send some pieces with you guys to do, and I'm going to show them off on the channel. So if you're watching and you've gotten this far in the video, stay tuned. We're going to show off some of their camo patterns, and I've got a CZ455 we're going to send with them that's an integral. I think we're going to do Tiger Stripe.
Oh, Vietnam Tiger.
Would that be fun? Have you've done Tiger Stripe before?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm curious to see how you do Tiger Stripe. I love Tiger Stripe. I think it's an amazing finish. And we'll come up with a couple of other things that you can just have free reign to just get creative and do whatever the heck you want.
That would be amazing.
That's my favorite, for sure.
A blank canvas.
Frank, the gentleman that I was telling you about earlier, when he brought his 6.5 Grendel, he said bronze and Spartan themed. And that's it. That's all he gave me. But he let me use my creativity, and that's where I have a blast.
But aren't those the most fun to
do? They really are.
When a customer says, hey, here's the basic premise, just go nuts.
Yes.
Doesn't it make a better result?
It does. And, I'll tell you what, I was on cloud 9 when I gave it back to him because he was absolutely freaking out.
It was awesome.
He took it over to Johns Creek Gun Range and showed it off to everybody there. Yeah. And that's actually how a lot of people found out about us, was him taking his cool guns over there after bringing them to us.
There is no greater feeling than being an artist and just loving art and sharing your art with people, and especially when it's your creation. It's not like someone came and showed you a gun on Instagram and said, hey, I want mine to look like this. You're kind of like, oh, that's someone else's art. You don't have the heart to tell them because they're your customer.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's better when it can really be your art. And I understand that. That's how that leopard gun was for me.
Right.
When this person's telling me they want leopard print, I'm like, leopard print? I'd never put that on a gun. But you know what? I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. I hope I can find a picture of that gun. If I do, I'm gonna put it here on the screen for you guys to see. But dude, thank you guys so much for visiting, hanging out.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope y'all had a great time, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me about camo.
Of course,
we
man.
appreciate it. You having us here. Our YouTube channel is pretty small. We don't have a whole lot of followers. It's relatively new, but being able to come here and chat with you has been an honor.
So how can people find you?
We are on YouTube. Just search the King of Camo.
You'll find our skull on there.
Yep, our skull logo. And then we're also on Instagram, king.of.camo, and Facebook, of course. Just search the King of Camo. And lastly, our website, www.thekingofcamo.com. We have, we have all the gear that we sell in the shop available for purchase. But you can also inquire about any kind of laser engraving, custom refinishing, or custom Kydex holsters.
Yes, everything that you guys that they put on the website. If you want to send us something or you have a question about anything, I love answering the questions. If I don't know the answer, Nate knows the answer. If Nate doesn't know if it's a gunsmithing question, Billy probably knows. So,
awesome.
I read those every day.
Well, you guys are local, so I have a feeling, we'll do more episodes in time. So, look, guys, let me know what you'd like to hear us discuss, or if there's something maybe I left out that you want us to go in more detail about, or maybe if we want to do a shop tour and maybe go through spraying a gun and maybe kind of go step by step and show you guys what these guys do. If they're willing to do that, maybe that's something we can accommodate in the future. But thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. And this is kind of your camo crash course, if you will. So maybe you guys have a little bit better idea of what goes into this. It's not just grabbing a can of spray paint, is it?
No, not really.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me. And I really appreciate y'all coming down.
Eric. Thank you, Eric.
Many more videos on the way. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget, check out SDI. And look, I'm actually gonna chat with them because I don't. Actually, I hate that I don't know this, but I don't know if SDI offers courses on spraying. I might have to, chat with them about that and see, because that might be something they can expand into their programs if they don't already offer it. So,
absolutely.
But if you are looking into gunsmithing, check out SDI. Great people. Go over to Ballistic Ink and pick yourself up a snazzy new T-shirt. That's one way that you can help support our efforts directly if you wish to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Many more on the way. We'll see you soon.